Good morning, Thomas. Good morning, Johnny. And good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
Yeah. Michael, can you change your name on the screen showing support? You can just change your name to Michael so that it'll be easy for others.
Okay.
And Thomas and Johnny, Michael Lawrence will be your trainer for CISSP. And Michael, you have only two students in this training, and one is Thomas and the other is Johnny. So you can introduce yourselves, and you can just start the training. Okay.
Okay. Hello, I'm Michael Lawrence. I'm a CISSP certified professional. I've got my A+, Network+, MCP, and Sniper platform certifications for SIEM. I will be going over some of the objectives for the CISSP exam and some of the exam style that I've seen in the past that they've used. And then, you can take a moment to introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name is Thomas Stocking. I am a product manager for a software company. I'm now shifting careers over to security based on the new job I just got. And I have always been interested in security. I've held a couple of SANS certifications in the past. I haven't maintained them, but I was an intrusion detection analyst, and I really enjoyed that work. So I decided I'd get back into security now, and I always wanted to get the CISSP. So a lot of the concepts in the material are familiar to me, but I never got the certification. So I'm going to go through it in detail now and go ahead and pick up the exam anyway, and eventually get the certification.
I mean, the exam, they say, as they said when I took the boot camp in 2016, it's a mile wide and an inch deep. It's lots of little bits of trivia, but it's not as super deep as some of the SANS certs.
Yeah, those were definitely a challenge. A lot of hands-on work to get those.
This here, they could, randomly ask you fire codes, U.S., British, or anything international. So, I mean, that's the only quirk of the test. They may ask, when I last took it, there was like 250 questions, 25 of them beta, but it seems like they've gone, as reading the outline, they've gone to more slightly adaptive format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also had a Novell CNE back in the day, and that was an adaptive set of tests. So, okay.
Yeah, I remember that one. It's like the first time I took that one, I missed it by 3 questions.
Yeah, the only one I missed was the TCP/IP because it was so it was such a left field thing at the time. Now, of course, I own a copy of TCP/IP Illustrated, and it's pretty much second nature.
They're saying here that like this one's adaptive. Anyway, about the CISSP, it's for like security and risk management, asset security, communication network security, identity and assessment, and security assessment. testing, security operations, and some of it will go over software development security. So usually that was like some of the beta get you question answer. Might be correct. So a lot of it will be drawn from the CISSP common body of knowledge. At the time I took it, there was an online test simulator that we took with the boot camp. So you can basically go over your chapter questions. I don't know if they've included that in here, but that's what I had last used. I mean, you know, as I said, like CISSP is very broad. It's just not very, you know, too much depth. It's just, you know, leveraging stuff. It's like 5 years of paid work experience and 2 or more of the 8 domains. College degrees, a waiver. Like if you've already worked in security, you basically can, as long as you have documentation for those, and I would try and gather those up, because otherwise it'll give you the associated CISSP and it will be a bit of an irritation to try and go for endorsement, because they have made the test, you know, and the endorsement process a little bit more stringent, because they had some kid that had a master's degree at 19 years old. It was like a child prodigy with like 3 or 4 patents behind his name, so everybody still cried foul, as he got his CISSP without too much fuss.
Yep, shouldn't be a problem.
So yeah, I would definitely get your documentation, because like if you try and self-certify, or unless you have a friend that's a CISSP on hand, getting the endorsement can be kind of a pain. And then sometimes they'll audit, and then you want to basically back it up with your evidence. Otherwise, they'll just say like, no.
Yeah, I think I've got everything I need to do that.
So anyway, they'll make you be the associate for a while, and then basically keep you there. And you have to get lots of credits and other stuff. I don't know if you've seen like the online job portal, or I mean the online portal for it.
I think so. This is separate from the testing portal, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like you'll sign in here. You can basically also create an account with like BrightTalk. Then you can link it to your ISC squared account. But like you watch the videos, you get like 1 hour CPE. So that will go toward the maintaining of your certs. Like if you have CompTIAs or otherwise like that, you can usually take your transcript and put it upon your IC, you know, your CompTIA requirements to keep them up to date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need a certain number of credits every year. I saw that.
Yeah, like for an associate, it's like 40 credits for your job. But I mean, you can get like up to 6 credits from doing your job every year. You know, some of the Dallas symposiums here in the DFW area, like Dallas Fort Worth, you can go to like an industry trade show and easily get like 3 to 6 CPEs for doing that kind of stuff. So, and then you can add them to the, you know, credentials task. You know, you go to any association meetings like OWASP or ISA, you can also add their credits to that too. So there's that as far as like maintaining it.
Oh, so the ISA credits work too? So I'm an ISA member.
Yeah, ISA credits will work. Like there's the Hack the Box credits that you can get. They'll actually give you a certificate. You can basically scan and upload for those. So like the Hack the Box from ISA here in the DFW area definitely works. Like a few weeks ago, there was another industry trade show in the Irving Convention Center. So wherever you are, there's usually one. There's also a big ISA conference coming up, or IC squared conference coming up that's like national, like in Vegas or something. That's like you just attending, you get like 24 credits.
Oh, wow.
So you can get a great deal of credits from that. So like some of the trade shows, you can get a ton of credits. So not too shabby on those particular requirements. So it's fairly easy to maintain. You can just watch a video and get like an hour long accreditation. So usually once or twice a month they've got some, or they have some that are stashed on Bright Talk. You just watch them, and you can read your email or study for another cert, and as long as you listen to them for about an hour, then you're good to go. So not too hard. I don't know what test bank system that they gave us, but I mean, basically it looks like they shortened the exam time down because a lot of people were blowing it out of the park in under 3 hours. At the time, there was like a totalist last time I took it. There was more questions on there, but you will get a score on your test if you don't pass. You will pass, but they will not give you a score. So, basically they don't want like the CompTIA places, like if you pass with a certain score, it makes it easier to get a job as an instructor. Or like certain places will prefer you because you have 10 more points than the other guy. But here, once you pass, you're pretty much a CISSP or an associate of the CISSP, hands down. No ifs, ands, or buts if you pass the score. But 50 or 680, they'll be like, yep, yeah, just missed by X. But my point is that when I took it, I didn't want to. I blew it out of I had one voucher from work in Texas. So that time, since the unemployment people were gracious enough to pay for it, I was gracious as the one that we used, like in training, that they gave us a long time ago at my boot camp. And, you can chew it up in sections, but like at the time I took it, it said they will make you go to a Pearson VUE center, not like the Pearson VUE like at your mom and pop certification boot camp. You will have to go to like the Pearson professional building. So I don't know where you guys are at or where you guys are from, but I used
It
to.
seemed to indicate there was an online option, maybe because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I hadn't known. I mean, I'm just saying, based off of last experience, I haven't seen like the online proctored version. I actually had to go into the building and be, held hostage. But the last time I took it, you had a total of 6 hours. I blew that test out of the water in like about 2.5 hours because I had over prepared for it. And I took my trainer's strategy. He, suggested like Slim Jims or like something spicy. It was like spicy jerky and some caffeine because you could get up and take a break. Do about 30, the 45 questions, because at that time it was a 250 question slug. So do about 45 questions, get up, go around, go pee, slam a Coke. It's like by the time I was done with it, I was wired with enough caffeine to wake a cemetery. So, you couldn't get bored on the questions, but, that was like the strategy at the time was like, the spicy food was to help, be that slap to the face to wake you up. Because like you had other people around you taking like tests to be like a certified nurse, a plastic surgeon, getting their real estate license, because that was basically the type of Pearson testing center that you have to go to. They kind of lock you in, they make you take biometrics for the door, whole to do. That was like the big deal. But I'm hoping that they included this particular test simulator. It's not too badly priced for $50, but yeah.
Thanks. That's a good tip.
It's like, yeah, this was like the test that I took because you could break it up into chapters. That way you could start going over what you miss. But you know, like you could get so bored of taking the thing that you could screw up, or you try and zip through it too quickly. But basically, you go by the chapter. Then once you start getting the chapters, right, then you could pretty much, start doing that because there's a substantial pool of questions on the test. I mean, they may ask you nowadays 150 and have it more adaptive, but at the time I took it, there was a pool of like 2,500 questions that it could assemble your test from. So, it was well to do to be significantly overprepared. So, like, I had probably overstudied for at least a good 2 or 3 weeks because I only had one voucher, and since I was unemployed and broke, I didn't have the choice. So the security field can be interesting. Where I was last working at, they're going IPO, so it's like they love project managers.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if they've got sales skills, which me being former military, you know how well I sound on that one. And they loved milking them billable hours, so that's another story. But here's like the average weighting of the test, which it looks like they've changed slightly. It looks like they've increased like the supplement security. But security and risk management's like their biggest deal. Asset security, security architecture and engineering. And the other tests like the CISSP CF for that particular endorsement, these will probably weigh more. Communication and network security, identity and access management, security assessment and testing, and then security operations. It's like the other ones on it. Like the linear examination, like the old style one that I did, is like you go to the Pearson VUE, you're basically caged in. You can't leave the testing site, but like you go into the bathroom area or whatever else you can. Like they'll let you up at least 2 or 3 times. Like that's what I did. I checked over my answers, made sure I got the best, and then hammered it, and then sent it home. And pretty much the weight of it is fairly similar on that one too. So I take the online proctor there. Domain 1, security and risk management. They basically want you to adhere to, promote professional ethics, IC squared code of ethics. They kind of take that as a big deal. Understand app security concepts, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Everybody knows about the CIA triad, correct?
Yeah. Confidentiality, integrity, accessibility.
Yeah, I'm just saying the CIA triad is still a big deal here, and then they have authentication and non-repudiation as the other parts, other small sub bits of the triangle that they have, sort of tacked on as I guess like the underlining points of it. Evaluate security governance principles, basically alignment of security functioning to business strategy, goals, missions, objectives. Acquisitions, divestitures, governance committees, organizational roles, responsibilities, security control frameworks, due diligence, care. I take it you've heard of like the most common frameworks, correct?
Yeah, the CIS framework is the one I'm using.
That's what a lot of cloud companies are using. is CIS. Other ones that'll be a big deal is like NIST, especially if you get into the DoD type of companies in the world. NIST becomes more important to them, especially. So they have to go by NIST 800. They also have to use like sticking tools like Steel Sig or Stig or stuff like that. Then determine compliance and other requirements. So I mean, different contractual, legal, and industry standards and regulatory requirements. You might have like a hospital that needs a high trust the CIS, as well as make sure ensuring mapping to high trust, as well as HIPAA and those particular patient safeguards and privacy requirements. And privacy requirements here is getting a huge boost. Other countries that are younger than the United States have a privacy clause in their constitutions. There's whispers that they're looking at passing a constitutional amendment for privacy.
That'd be good.
So that could make Facebook's current business model a bit, bit different. Might have to go to paid subscribers for the bonus features, right?
Yeah.
So that would be a very interesting development if they understanding legal and regulatory issues and pertain to information security and holistic context, cybercrime, data breaches, licensing, intellectual property, import, export controls, transborder data flow, privacy. For certain companies now that have to do with GLBA, they might leave like their data into like say a European data center and then keep their US data separate in US data centers. It makes it much less of a pain for shipping data over. Because like if they have the US data on like say Irish servers, that may be legal in the US, but then then basically the companies that want to do all the things they can get away with in the US suddenly have to abide by GLBA on US customers, which makes them not as happy.
Yeah, the whole privacy shield thing's gone after the Shrem 2.
Yeah, so there's that with the little things there. Cause like some of the companies here, they're all in keeping your data private, but they want to get enough. They want enough nuggets out of it that they can still make you the product here in the U.S. Understand regulatory and investigation types, criminal, civil. So that's basically their
That stuff I don't know.
so understanding data investigation types, like to have a forensic certification, which they've adjourned. I was like studying for it, and then I was studying the book for it, and then they killed it. So I was like, okay, if I take it, then it's only going to be worth something for like 2 more years, and then it's going to delist. So I was like, nah. Book was interesting though. It's very similar to some of the others. Administrative, criminal, civil, regulatory, industry standards. Like you might have an internal investigation. If you're trying to like see what an employee's up to, because like some companies, they'll sue an employee if they're being malicious. They can sue them, or hey, if they leave to competitor X, they can, then strike strategically at that customer if, the guy has like the Waymo secrets in his, laptop as he leaves the door. So, they're stealing intellectual property, sometimes like that, or sometimes, if the malicious teenager in Kansas who's bored, they'll basically like, hey, your parents own a nice, mighty big farm. Yeah, we'll sue. If it goes to auction, it's $20 million. We'll take that chance. Otherwise, they'll just hand it over to like the FBI, who has a tax-free CSIRT team. So I don't know if any of you are members of the InfraGard.
Nope.
It's easy to get. It may take a while, but it's fairly simple to get. You can apply with the FBI and the InfraGard on theinfragard.org. And you can get all kinds of useful contacts and information about it.
Interesting.
Plus, they tend to prioritize your phone in national disasters. A nice hidden perk. Development, document, and implement security policies, standards, and procedures and guidelines. It's like, how to develop them, write them, and all that stuff. Identify and prioritize business continuity plans, business impact analysis, and develop, and document the plan and scope the plan. Fat pipe.
Michael, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. So the
I know.
GLBA is the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, that's basically one that a lot of the financial organizations have to comply with, i.e. banks. Anything regulatory. PCI is more of a voluntary standard for like the payment card industry.
Right.
They'll audit and stuff on it. I was just saying Fat Pipe has a disaster recovery software that is useful for like documenting people, and it helps write the business impact plans, basically keeps track of people's phone numbers and automatically updates them. It's a little bit more integrated because like the chapter president here of the IC Squared Dallas, he's like done like Pepsi as an audit. And like, the guy who's supposed to contact in a disaster retired like 6 years ago and then is now deader than a doornail. So, hey, yeah, I'm supposed to reach out to this retired CISO who's now dead. So, like, a lot of places don't like doing the business disaster recovery planning software, but I was saying Fat Pipe had a offshoot that did like the some helped with some automating some of the PDF building and then kept it online as like one of their side businesses. I was just trying to pull it up as an example, but that's what I was hunting for a second, because like where I was consulting that a few years ago, they had that, and a lot of people were liking it because, let's put it this way, when you do tabletop exercises, no one wants to hear a disgruntled employee, employee stole like a city bus, packed it full of dynamite like a crazed redneck, and lit the fuses like 10 seconds before crashing into the building. No one was in the building but like the upper management, because it was like a special Saturday that they had to come in and work, and they were in the process of moving the building to the new site, to a much bigger building, and doing some additional work, and they all got blown up. And now you have to have execute pieces of the business plan. You need to promote people in IT management to CTO, and they need to take over duties and then find the documents and what documents of the vendors, and start reaching out to them and say, hey, we're still auditing our agreements, but no one likes to do those tabletop exercises, or like, hey, we have a tornado that come hit us, or a hurricane, or earthquake. Osama bin blah blah blah, decided to go to our Israeli site office and blow it up.
Mm-hmm.
How do we recover that office? So it's continuity planning, but it's sort of a must. It's like if something bad happens to you, it's sort of like the business's last will and testament, or at least hey, how do we keep operating and keep continuing? So like if the guy who founded the place has a legacy to leave his kids, and keep your kids fed and all that good stuff, and not just go like bankrupt and like not pay everybody. So they have all of the usual stuff in there. They'll do their due diligence on candidate hiring. They'll do their employee agreements and policies, onboarding, transfers, and termination processes. There's vendor and consultants agreements, but design principles of a building, like using different stuff to make natural surveillance, as well as basically keeping the pretty architecture, because if the building looks pretty, people are less likely to do crime against it. It's well lit and stuff like that. But like you can basically keeps people less likely to commit crime. It's well lit. It's secured and maintained. Like their building is on a hill, they shred documents and stuff like that. Be trees at certain rings. Like if an intruder, like if you have an active shooter that's outside, you can basically look at the trees, and then basically eyeball that like your fourth rows of trees is 50 meters out, or 100, or so many yards out. So let's say it's a hidden security feature using CISSP, which somewhere in your PMBOK, which I don't know if they gave you that in a paper copy or a like electronic copy.
I think so far all we've got is the slides. Cool. Thanks,
Okay.
Donnie. That's good info. I hadn't checked there.
Yeah, as I said, like this, the CISSP, they gave me the last boot camp school here in town gave me the CISSP exam online at the boot camp, style exam sim, since you could keep repeating it online and save the results. But yeah,
it looks like your answer to the pandemic, because I was looking to do person view. I'm at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And then after spending 23 years active duty before I retired, and I've been out for about 7 years now.
Fort Benning in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when I got back to Indianapolis, I had a boss who was former green stuff, Might have had one of them fancy beanies on his head. You know,
Wouldn't know anything about that.
yeah, he did some special. He did some special secret swirl stuff, and because of that, if you had a secret clearance, and he could get you onto some lovely projects that no one knows nothing about.
Absolutely, the projects don't exist.
Oh yeah.
I spent quite a bit of time at Fort Bragg as an unconventional warfare specialist.
Well, in my case, I fixed laptops and desktops that don't exist.
And taught people about cell phones and computers in foreign countries.
No, I didn't go that far. I just did all the interesting civilian and or otherwise governmental sites in fun places.
There we go.
So there's that. So I mean, always I'm just glad nowadays that they have tools and frameworks, because when you had to do the paper audits, when you had to print off like a whole forest of paper to like do an audit and then mark stuff on it with a pen for 6.5 weeks, that was glorious fun. Now your average GRC tool can do that compliance level report and pretty printed into a PDF in about 10 minutes. For an organization, pretty quickly, and or have a dashboard in real time to show you your compliance level and or monitoring. So I don't know if you guys have ever used GRC tools.
No. I've been doing it the old-fashioned way with spreadsheets, but
Anyway, the new way, like Archer GRC, it uses like a seam-like dashboard, and it produces a nice, pretty spreadsheet and bar graphs. And SANS has a GRC tool. So, it'll give you your dashboards, it'll give you your business, impact reports. Iramba is the free one you can play with at home. Iramba is a open source, or shall we say freemium solution. You can get most of your compliance reports for free, but like certain ones, like if they're advanced, such as CIS and or NIST, they'll make you pay a small donationable license fee. So, you could technically get away with writing the licensing fee off, I guess, but it comes as a VM that you can download. So you can get an idea of it, but it works kind of like a seam. So like if you're like say you're a retail organization, and you can even have agents on the cash register. So if people configure the cash register and the payment terminal is wrong, you can get an alert, send someone to go fix. Because the PCI industry, if they find out, and they fine you, it's like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 or something. So useful. So I will paste it to the chat right quick. It's at least one that you can meddle with for free. It has like a VM. Like as I said, they have it as community for free and then paid, so it's open source based. Not too inexpensive.
thanks. That's really useful, actually.
Yeah, let's put it this way. Yeah, our friends at the DoD, they love their spreadsheets. They love you killing like 3 tons of trees too. So I wouldn't know anything about certain places in Colorado, and having to spend 6 weeks of my ever-loving life and in places that that they say officially doesn't exist, and you don't want to exist there. It's so freaking in the middle of a blizzard, mind you. Making spreadsheet, doing paper audits, interviews of people that would rather just, like take you out back and shoot you. rather than, giving the answers that you need for your, compliance report. And then you have to compile a nice, pretty spreadsheet and bar graphs for the managers, and, yeah. The
That
GRC,
sounds familiar.
yeah. So you've had to do the ye olden DoD, audits from your. Real fun. And corn growth is up on the list of go faster. Anyway, the countermeasure selection and implementation is another one. Risk response. Like certain CVEs, like if you get a vulnerability alert for Windows, there might be certain ports on your firewall that you can block until there's an effective patch that comes down, or a registry key that you can add temporarily to disable a particular vulnerable service, or basically disable that registry entry until they have a proper patch. So, that's pretty much, countermeasures right there. In a nutshell, applicable type of controls: preventative, detective, corrective. I mean, preventative is always the best way to go if you can do so. But like if you're in the SOC environment, you're detecting stuff that's been breached, obviously, then you pretty much have to implement corrective means to either re-image the user's OS, or if it's just a piece of adware, wipe it out and fix. Control assets, so you don't want rogue assets going on your network. Like good security policy and privacy. Like nowadays, a lot of companies are using segmented networks. So if you have BYOD devices, they might have a network that just segments it off. And basically, once the devices authenticate, then they can at least get, some VPN access into the internal resources. But if it's your Amazon Alexa, it's not getting anything other than straight to the interwebs and letting you play music. That's it. So a lot of companies are using segmented networks, plus they'll segment certain networks like payroll and accounting and or the C-suite off from the rest of us lackey users. That way we can't see them, but they can see us. And likewise, the other people can't see IT, or IT security, but we can see them. That way, if an attacker penetrates the network, that there's enough layers for them to chew through, and it should take them more time. Other countermeasures that people are doing, especially nowadays, is deception networks. They emulate a whole entire network. They have top secret file and stuff like that that's basically set to act like little, breadcrumbs and juicy bait for the fish, for people fishing around in your network to bite on, and then throw the alarm when they do. So they have instead of the traditional honeypot or honey network that's kind of dumb, they have whole products that do that particularly well nowadays. Risk frameworks: NIST, HIPAA, GLBA, continuous improvement, risk maturity modeling. Always striving to improve, because some organizations that are like a small business, they may start out with a medium maturity model or a low model and try and get to a higher model with continuously improving. They may not have the budget to get there like an enterprise would, but there's they can still do quite a lot with very little, especially if they are creative. Excuse me. So, I mean, but CISSP won't dwell too much on, the stuff like this. I mean, basically that's what taxi feeds are for. Another one that you can get is OTX. There's other threat vendors, but this one here, you can get nice live pulses from. They'll email them to you. You can get them in real time. You can get them over API. I was working for Securonics, but as I said, they love their damned IPO. And it wasn't, so. Alrighty. Recruiters. A lot of love them.
Mhm.
They'll get a hold of my throat and never let go. I was working for Securonics, but then, they've got investments from Snowflake. DoD loves them. Capital One's bought into them, but I'll just say Capital One used to be my customer, and, anyway, they could take forever and a day to do anything, or there'd be too many focus meetings to do stuff like that. But they have OpenXDR. They've used other stuff. They have other. This one here is a behemoth as far as a SIEM goes. It's not so much one of the easiest ones, but it does millions of events per second in huge organization silos. I mean, there's a bunch of open source SIEMs that you can get. Some of them are cloud-based. Some you can just play with for free. Wazoo's an open source one that's basically based off the OSSEC agent. You can pretty much get a VMware image and or other image to meddle with. There's a Windows agent. You can piddle around with it. It comes with MITRE ATT&CK framework, and plus you can kind of scale it by clustering it. Whereas like Securonics, yeah, you need a huge AWS platform. You need Cloudera for data laking. You need 4 or 5 departments to set it up. I was part of one department, one particular department as part of the process. But they kind of gone. They want everybody to be a sales monkey too. There, us military types do not exactly have their sales demeanor that they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you dealt with Carbon Black or Cognito Stream at all?
I've dealt with
Because Carbon Black is supposed to be that VMware solution for all things cybersecurity. At least for the military and DoD, that's one of the things they were looking at for all our cyber teams. They're doing cyber protection.
Yeah, I just meant the Wazoo is a good one for it's open source, and
Nice.
I'm just saying it's open source, and if you want to piddle with it at home, or it's like small or medium-sized biz, related, plus you can get licensing or support from it. It's not too bad. So I just meant if you've never messed with SIEM and you're new to it, it would be, at least something you can piddle around with at home.
Yeah, quite familiar with Wazoo.
Okay. Yeah, it's like Wazoo and stuff like that you can pretty much piddle with at home, Yeah, more of Carbon and other stuff like that, or Black Duck for like source code scanning. But like Rambo's basically for GRC, it gives like similar, but it's basically, compliance reporting. You've missed this or you've missed that auditing, or this patch hasn't occurred, or this one's is a basic level SIEM. It also gets a threat stream, also uses like Suricata. You can also have it gate Suricata rules and everything else. I mean, the other ones you can get SIEM images for and meddle with, but at the same token, then like you have only so many days to get a license, and then if you forget about it, because so and so in your family had a wedding or graduation, you see them, then you didn't reset it on time, then you have to just like redo it. But I've deployed with tons of different SIEM solutions. Like McAfee Nitro used to be one, and then from what I hear, McAfee is for sale again. I heard even like that they went private, or like the that Carbon Black or one of the other people was looking to buy McAfee in total. I heard some whispers of that, like Mandiant or one of them taking a run at them.
Yeah, for the DoD, they bought into a lot of things that required licensing, and they were given that free trial like crack. Yeah, we'll take that. That's going to be awesome. And then when it came time to renew licenses, they got the full bill and decided that they just didn't know if they wanted to continue on. So I was part of an exercise where they were trying out multiple threat hunt tools. And that's why I was asking the questions if that was something that was being used in the outside world outside of DoD, because I've done
I
enough
mean,
time in the military. I got to find
yeah,
something else.
I'm just saying the Wazoo is not
I like it.
necessarily, it's not necessarily, the hugest, or I wouldn't say it's just something you can home lab. You can keep track of your stuff that way. I mean, they used to have a much prettier dashboard, or might be even another prettier dashboard that they were using back in the past with JSON and other stuff. But uh, let's see here. The other one that was useful for the SOC and hunting, this one uses Chocolatey scripting for more threat hunting type of stuff. Yes, we're going to click on the suspicious email. We're going to see what it does. Basically, you can take a Windows machine, you can run this, it runs up the packaging, it puts some pen test like packaging onto it. It does it all with Chocolatey and PowerShell. So that's pretty much what it does. It will bake, you can basically convert stuff over to it, and basically installs like Chocolatey packages, and then use Mandiant repos to update packages. It uses their custom repo for it. So you can make a Windows 10 Flare VM, and then, like some of the SOC process was like if you had a suspicious email and you had somebody doing threat hunt or reverse engineering, you could basically, catch the malware and see what it does, and then get a signature. Like some of the banks will do this. Like Bank of America has a team that does this here in Dallas. I just missed it. It's been $150,000 a year, and you get to play with all the toys.
That's cool.
But yeah, I didn't have a CEH or some of the other, or OSCP certs at the time, so I was just like, no. It's like, yeah, you get to do like the real job, but here you can get like a cloud. Basically, it'll turn a cloud Windows in there if you're feeling especially lazy. Um,
Oh, Vagrant, yeah.
can just grab a Windows 10 box and then plop these scripts onto it, and basically all it does is Chocolatey. It basically does box starter. Open source world is like box. Which basically you can provision a Windows 10 box or 11 from start. So it will, like this whole script here will compose it all. You can save a script on gist, and it'll set it up. You can even install like the various packages and stuff. It's basically what it's doing. But box starter installs Chocolatey, and then basically box starter just allows Chocolatey to survive like multiple reboots for like doing stuff like Windows updates and stuff that it needs to reboot, but it'll provision a box. But basically, this is doing the same thing in your VM. So you can use it to pick apart malware. You can snapshot it. Useful for that kind of stuff. A little bit beyond the scope, but like, if you're going, you seem to be going that way anyway, so may as well make mention of it. It's like you can develop countermeasures such as the ransomware signature, like hash signature or virus total signature, and slap it on your firewall so it becomes effectively doesn't affect you. Other
Cool.
tools like Iron Port security for email, a lot of companies use because it will look for suspicious files that have ransomware or loaded with the Metasploit goodness that you don't want. Dear so-and-so, it's the red team you hired. Just please click on this PDF. It's got Metasploit in it. You totally want it. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong, right? But no, they have like the Iron Port like email security will, all the emails that kick out, it'll kick them out. Even if you have like cloud enabled Gmail, it will go through your box. It will look like, say, spam, and then like you used to get like the ones here that would have like the signatures attached. Like if I really wanted to open them, but like the Iron Port will remove any of those that it matches with malware, and or delete it from the user's UI so they can't click it. Other ones too that you can do is you can go phishing on your users in a good way. So you can go fish your users. Basically, it doesn't send a real fish, but Known Before does it too. If you have a small business, you can go fish testing, see how well that the users in your don't click that check over that email class did. See how your people are doing. Like a week after doing the test. Like right on Friday when everybody's busy and frantic and it's deadline city and it's the end of the month. See how well they're paying attention. You can use this as it simulates a phishing attack, and it does like a fake phishing, but they can look pretty good. Like FBI's been warning lately on about a scam like it's where like say your best bud at XYZ Corp goes on vacation for 2 weeks. He's in the Bahamas on a second honeymoon with his wife, and his kids are at the water park half the time, and blah blah blah. Someone can steal his email, and they can send they'll just start sending spam, phishing emails and everything else. And because it's from a trusted email address, it's been one thing that's been going on. And it's like the people are not using the We too like you to submit. Wow. Type of English that raises suspicions like, hey, do you believe we from foreign country? Type of English. No, it's like, spot on, grammarly, polished, college level looking. They've been saying that like that's been on the rise lately, that they were warning at like just a few weeks ago.
It has gotten to the point where you never click on a link in your email ever.
Or, you have to pretty much vet it carefully. Or, that's what I'm saying. Like nowadays, though, if you're a medium-sized business and you have email security software, a lot of them are using threat intelligence in their stuff. So it tends to, like Ironport's one of them. There's a few more, but basically it will take a look at your email and then toss it if it's bad.
Is that host-based or is that server-based?
It's like a server-based appliance, but
Nice.
it uses SOAR technology, but it can connect to the cloud, to your cloud instances. It can be server or cloud-based SaaS. There's other email security solutions, but that basically keeps the phishing down to a minimum.
That was Ironport. I'm trying to put these links in a notepad so that I got all this stuff when we're done.
Darktrace is another one. That's like the other big one. That's like the big one for like SaaS technology. Ironport's basically Cisco. You can also get it as an on-prem appliance, kind of like a Barracuda box. But this one here, they have like Darktrace uses like threat intelligence type of stuff. It looks for advanced phishing. It also looks for like account takeover signatures. So like it can check with other people, like, hey, why is this account it can detect like, if Bill is on vacation, it'd be like, it'll start to disable his account. It's like, why is Bill sending, like 9,000 messages an hour? And he's on vacation, but the HR has him marked on vacation. So, it can do that, especially if it's internal email, because, like if the account gets taken over, it has like a little bit more sophistication. It can also look like domain spoofing. You're familiar with the 3 A's, right?
You were talking about authentication, authorization, and accountability.
No, I'm talking about the 3 letters of A.
Oh yeah. Oh, you mean the domain spoofing with the different characters that look the same? Yeah.
Yes, homonyms. It's basically, the particular homonyms, like you can have apple and then you can have apple, but if you spell it, but in Unicode to your eye, it looks the same. But,
But it's not. It's a different domain. And yeah, I used to work for a registrar, and we had to go and write some code to crack down on people who are registering homonym domains.
But, like even in pen testings had like uses for homonym scripts for that, just to, there's a few red team tools for it, but like for homonyms, it basically, was easy to trick people because you could basically just put a P in Russian, looks like a P in English, but it's an R. Or basically it'd be a pi, basically, type deal. But basically Ironport, Darktrace, Ironport, those are like at least two things. I mean, some of them are AI, some of them, can learn from other Darktrace instances that a user that your partner company's on vacation and like it's anomalous for their email when they only send maybe 2 or 3 emails a day to suddenly be sending like 9,000, like a spam bot. So, you know, there's email security now that can connect, especially for enterprise that can do it. Flare VM's good for certain things. But yeah, that's pretty much some basics right there. You know, there's, yeah, defense in depth, you know, pretty much these days, layer, or everything pretty much, especially in the enterprise, is layered as much as you can. And it's just, you know, some of the stuff that you want to use, you know, it's got to be effective, and it's got to be, you know, not an arm and a leg that you can, and stuff that I try and be as agnostic as I can, because, you know, because if it starts becoming not effective, then you want to get rid of it before it's too much of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, some places like to keep the tool around forever and a day, and even though it's not effective anymore. You know, especially with solar winds, because sometimes complacency breeds contempt.
Say it isn't so. Stop playing.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how everyone was so hooked on it. You know, that was what was up on the main screen and all the talks and jock. We got solar winds. We can see our network. We know everything that's going on. We know, you know, every 30 seconds we get a ping test on each one of our routers, and we know what's up, what's down. That's great. So does everybody else. Good job.
Woohoo, there's Zabbix. It runs on Linux. Hell, you can run on a Raspberry damn Pi. Woohoo! There's Naganos. There's a whole dozen of them. Like, there's some that use Naganos and then a newer modern UI for now. But, I mean, you know, there's a half dozen other ones that are free and don't, you know, have any vulnerable code attached to them. But hey, we've used it for time immemorial. We're going to keep using it. Now we're going to keep paying that expensive licensing. Yeah, I used to be a small, you know, IT consultancy and an MSP. Let's put it this way. Your average grad student can't afford to pay for any freaking licensing. But what he can play with is a bunch of free stuff, right? Might take me 6 hours of time instead of having it, you know, it set up immediately like in SolarWinds. Might have to be a little bit more creative, but, you know, once I got a good config, I'd save it and I'd use it again and again. And free was good. A lot of other businesses tended to agree. So they didn't have the licensing fees to keep that either. Plus, you know, never know what kind of backdoors were in it. Whereas the open source stuff, yeah, I could audit that stuff. You know, basically maintain security awareness, education, and training program. A lot of companies will do that. You know, as again, the phishing testing, they'll have like security champions or like IE security officers. Tabletop gamification, you know, you'll play what if games a lot if you're doing the compliant side. Hey, president of the company, we need to kill you just for this tabletop exercise. You're having a fun weekend with your family, and then your Cessna went down into the Rockies. We're sorry. We're totally sorry. Now, since you're, you know, lying in a pile of rubble, and we have to like keep the company operating, you know, what do we do? What are the risks? You know, if his personal emails leak, you know, what's the personal risks of the company if he had a mistress on the side we didn't know about? You know, all those fun tabletop type of what if scenarios, or what if the SCADA equipment in the elevator that for the new building we bought has vulns and people can use the old dial-up system to, like, you know, get into the elevator equipment and then pivot into our network. So, you'll be constantly doing stuff like that as far as like that. Asset security. So, basics here is data classification, asset classification. So, is it a piece of hardware? What's the software it's running? What are the key data assets that it's running, i.e., if you could afford to lose a database, which one is it? Is it like the product catalog that's been discontinued from 3 years ago, or is it the one that they're using right now? Is it the customer database that's current versus the archival customer database from 10 years ago? That's there for just market research such as demographic and trying to improve your advertising. So which ones can you afford to be without for extended periods of time if you had like a ransomware incident?
Mm-hmm.
If it took you a week to restore, which ones can you live without for a while? Establish information and asset handling requirements. Secret, top secret, bigot cleared.
Right.
Yeah, my grandparents were bigots. So, bigots was a special section of clearance.
Wow. Didn't know that one.
Yeah. Let's just say that they were feeling a little bit bombed out after, being drugged to London and watching most of their friends get blown up. And then they were like college professors, and one of them was an engineering professor. You can figure out which machine that they were working on in which park in London.
Uh-huh.
That's why they were bigot cleared. That's why they were bigots. It's the reason why they said of bigots because, basically if someone heard that, they figured, well, you're just an asshole. I don't need to pay any more attention, So then they would walk on. That was, and to figure, hey, it's a special section of top secret and, compartmented. Basically that's the one thing in the military, you'll have all kinds of data classification, like ITT Excellus, or ITT when they were a whole. We were in the process of splitting them, but to say that they had a nice set of dishes in Fort Wayne and did all kinds of nice stuff for our DoD friends and, places in Virginia that don't exist. Wouldn't know anything about those. But they had like a whole department that would throw us out of the room if they needed to, and handled all the Outlook systems that had special tagging. They had more GPOs on the Outlook server for all the secret squirrel emails than you could shake a stick at. Because they had to keep them locked down. They had to force them to be encrypted. They had to force them onto like special shares that were encrypted, and like they had to audit every time that they were read or accessed, and then they made sure that the user used multi-factor. It was nuts. But ITT had, snacked on so many companies that they were starting to collapse under their own weight. And because they had a division that did like water sewage treatment, you had a different regulatory compliance, and you had a division that was making electronics, i.e. night vision goggles for the military, and then you had a division that was doing like space systems for, our friends at Langley as contractors. So, and then you had like their consumer products division and manufacturing. So, they had all those regulatory compliances like tripping each other up. So they decided to split into 3 large enterprises. That way they didn't have to trip over each other's toes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a fun rife mess. So they had all kinds of that tagging stuff, we didn't get to see it. But they had like certain assets classified, as far as systems, and everything very well classified, because some systems we could touch and some systems were no. So basically, some companies will do that, which is the crown jewels, which are the ones in your company that you absolutely got to protect, and then which ones can you afford to lose, i.e. the receptionist's machine at the front. If you had to re-image it and it's got a Google Calendar for saying, hey, welcome to your interview, here's your visitor badge. You can predict and running in under 30 minutes. So, it's like which machines in your office can you afford to lose if you had to? Provision resources securely, information and asset ownership, asset inventory, tangible and intangible. Trade secrets, the formula for Coke. It's locked up in 3 different safes across Atlanta. 2, one in Coke, one in the Coke vault, one in some nebulous bank vault, and some in another like international bank in Atlanta. Who knows? Can't say for sure. But that's their big claim to fame and their trade secret, and they're not wanting to give it up. So that's basically like that would be part of the intangible and slightly tangible asset for Coke, is all of their recipes and stuff that they keep trade secrets. Same with any other organization. It's the some of the intangible assets can be like goodwill and other stuff, and the trust of your competitors as well as partners and or employees. A lot of people don't realize that a big nasty breach does brand damage, damages reputation. That's an intangible asset, but it can, if people don't want to do business with you, well, it can be belly up fast. Asset management here, keeping track of your boxes, software, vendor life cycle, because no one wants to be fined by the software police or running out of licenses. That would be a compliance issue, but still, the money that you have to pay in a fine could have gone towards your IT security budget and other IT budget to purchase new assets and or new licenses, etc. Data lifecycle, certain things like GLBA and SOX compliance, some of the data has to be retained, for up to 7 years, such as emails or anything else like that. Other company policy, like Capital One, since they got breached, they were getting kind of iffy about how long to retain certain data. And I won't breach that too much, because otherwise I will get the naughty smack from on high if someone blabbles about it, because of that nice, lovely NDA I signed. But they, wanted to shorten how much time that their team retained certain data, because they retained it too long. They were tired of all the lawyers trying to bake them down for everything. But
I thought we just kept everything forever.
No.
That's the internet, right? Just add more gigs, terabytes.
I'm just saying that, let's put this way.
I'm with you. I'm with you. That I'm absolutely joking, sir.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying, if you were the ISP that retained Hillary's emails, if you wanted to retain them for 1 month, rich. Or I'm just saying, if you had a security policy that retained them for 1 month, Congress would have given you, a nice stern chewing out. But it's like, hey, our company privacy policy says we only retain if once the user deletes the email, that there's only an emergency backup copy for a month before it deletes. As we also have European customers, GLBA. They would have not been happy, but at the same token, then they couldn't rake you over the lawyer coals. But let's put it this way: it's like if you gave the courts anything, then the one lawyers would sue you, to get access to them, and then basically then there'd be other lawyers suing the oblivion out of you. So it's sort of like, how long do you want to retain the hot potato? Is the question.
Yeah, if you don't need the data, actually you can be fined for keeping it in under the GDPR.
Right, but also under like GLBA, it's like then you have no length of keeping it. So let me take a break
Hmm.
and grab this one. I need a drink. SOC data around too long because they can get sued for breaches or compliance errors. Data maintenance, how long you keep it, how long it stays, corruption, otherwise, who owns it, what the data collection policy is under the law, and where is it located. Like certain data, if you like have U.S. data in Ireland, congratulations, you now have GLBA concerns, which may not go so well. Determine data security controls and compliance requirements, like HIPAA, high trust. It's definitely going to be needed to be encrypted at rest, as well as in transport, such as like using IPsec. So there's that. Then the cloud access security broker. CASB systems is often used also to do further authentication to make sure that rights are audited to it and or to speed up access to stuff like Office 365.
Hmm.
Domain 3, security architecture and engineering. Threat modeling, keep it simple. Least privilege, making sure that you have roles like, sometimes you might have a person that's got on hybrid roles, i.e. if they're IT manager, you might have their role composite of user and then certain other rights that are certain user groups that are added to give them, their privileges. That way they have just a minimum of what they need to do their job. Defense in depth. HPE security policy, when I worked there, is that they would buy 3 different routers. They may have an HPE router, they may have a Palo Alto router, they may have a Juniper router, they may have a Cisco router. But they would layer them 3 layers deep between sites, because they figured if there was a security flaw that not all 3 of them would typically share it in the firmware. So if there was a Juniper flaw and someone penetrated it, they have, the Palo Alto or the Cisco or HPE router to contend with next. So they would randomize the order and they would keep which order that those routers were, and those basically on site as a need to know classification. They would just mention that there's 3 layered routers there, and they would keep that based on the security policy, and you would have to reach out to the router owner that owned that particular information if you needed to know. HPE's security policy that had defense in depth was sort of draconian and would look familiar to any DoD requirements. Secure defaults, making sure that certain extra features aren't turned on if they don't need to be. Certain things are designed to fail securely.
Right.
Instead of like if it fails, the door stays locked instead of just flings open the doors to the ATM to where I can just grab the money. Separation of duties, banks do this a lot. because it makes it easier to audit. Banks also instituted the policy of vacation just to get you out of the bank so they could check over your books. That's where vacation comes from. Hey, we just need to look over your stuff to make sure you're not stealing stuff. But hey, have a fun trip. Keep it simple. You know, a lot of this DevOps, fandangled stuff. It looks cool. It sounds cool. Investors love to invest upon it. Grand. But anyways, that was basically the whole crux of it. Zero Trust has gotten very popular as far as a model, basically trying to keep your service accounts from being, too trusted, as well as like vaulting any secrets so they don't get exposed. Privacy by design, trust but verify, and then shared responsibility. CISSP, Biba, Star Model, and Bell La Padula main models. Select controls based on system security requirements. Understand security capabilities, information system, memory protection, trusted platform module, encryption, decryption. Most people do not know that that some of the firmware, some of the ARM-based firmware on embedded devices, i.e. a SATA drive, like the chip that drives the hard drive and or solid state drive, runs an embedded form of Linux. Some
really?
some researchers at Black Hat and stuff made a proof of concept, and there's also been ransomware variants or other malware variants in the thing that can write to that firmware. Meaning that even if you reformat the drive, switch it from Linux server to Microsoft server, or vice versa, that the system can continuously be reinfected. So, like secure boot on like certain platforms, like Linux, yeah, I can tell you it could be a real chore to set up secure boot. But if you do, then no one's tampering with your kernels, and no one's tampering with your stuff. But you can get a system up. I mean, there's also a cheat using like the shim that's been signed by Red Hat and using their key to get things up and moving pretty easily. But by having signed UEFI firmware, it can make it more difficult for certain flavors of UEFI ransomware to infect your hard drives and gain a foothold onto them, because like some of them can make physical installs to the actual hardware itself onto the ARM32 BIOS chip and then bake itself in. And IoT has lovely possibilities for monitoring, but because a lot of companies don't, they want to make their $200 of fame, and but yes, IoT can be extra lovely. Isn't it pretty? That Raspberry Pi on the thermometer. But yes, it gave them a foothold into the casino's network because they didn't segment any there wasn't any network segmentation for like IoT devices. Like as I said, these days it's like if would try and contain like the IoT devices on like a guest network and
Right.
use 802.11.x authentication. Once they authenticate, then it basically gives them a VPN ticket into the inside of the network. Whereas like the IoT devices, I would permanently imprison on an IoT network. Because I don't care if you bring your Alexa speaker, but yes, these may be very popular, like Raspberry Pi, Odroid, stuff like that. A lot of people will retro game with them. Yay! I've also seen stuff that's designed like pen testing software kits that are designed to look like they're a retro game from yore that run on these, so they don't look suspicious unless you're looking for them. So IoT devices can be lovely. Get these plugged into your network. Select the Wireshark and upload data to the cloud. What could be wrong, right? I've seen I've seen pen test kits that look like literally somebody that's running a Game Boy emulator. Until you look at it, oh, this attack, Fraggle attack, spoofing attack, phishing.
And it all comes preloaded.
Yes, but to the average clueless, user, it literally looks like somebody like loading a Game Boy game. The screens look just like it. And, Docker, it has some secure uses and some insecure uses, and microservices and containerization. They're a boon for security, but they also have their own security woes as well. The nicety in theory of Docker is that if someone fucks them up hard enough and bad enough that they'll just implode. But when it implodes, it basically causes the whole thing to respawn clean, meaning if there was any action in it, it disappeared. But
In
if
theory.
I'm saying in theory, of course, but yet if there was a particular vulnerability that they had injected while, crashing the thing, then they can then pretty much inject arbitrary code into your nice kernel and everything, and you're not having a good day, but they are. But if Docker is running right, then basically Docker's I don't know do with this crash respawns, or the Kubernetes just kicks them off the container and moves them to the container, crashes that one, and then spins up a new copy. Yay! Yay for container orchestration. Yay! But at the same, people have to layer the security just right to use these containers extremely effectively. I mean, they lab just right, but then certain other features need to be done. Some places are now using like edge computing systems to speed stuff up, like CASB appliances or stuff like that. Virtualized systems, distributed systems, etc. I mean, cryptography systems people have seen for like the old cryptographics accelerators for like web servers for years. Those have kind of gone away for like crypto accelerator cards, especially for like high pressure web servers. Ow. But, database systems and so forth, and industrial control systems, Shodan is the way.
Mm-hmm.
Nuclear power plants, anyone?
Yeah, my business partner was a nuclear radiation control officer on a nuclear submarine.
Hey, yeah, but how would you like your nuclear submarine to be connected to the interwebs and explorable by Shodan? Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah.
But, some of the civilian shit is. And Shodan, you can, look at all kinds of stuff here. Like literally some of the stuff from, you want to look at GE and nuclear power? Be my guest. Shodan will find them. If it's a nuclear power station like 3 Mile Island, hey, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah,
Yeah, hey,
Shodan's terrifying.
This is why we still play the movie War Games, so people are situationally aware.
Mm-hmm.
not too long ago with the in-laws, it's like he goes, well, my brother doesn't do anything for my dad and brother. I'm like, the only way to win is not to play the game. He knows that both of them are getting decrepit, and there ain't shit you can do for them. The more you keep trying to help them, the more you're just not putting them in the home that they need to. But, cryptographic systems, which pretty much what kind of needs you need, like key
Mm-hmm.
systems, probably everybody's familiar with RSA. Cryptographic methods, elliptical curve, asymmetric. And now you have quantum keys.
It's scary.
Well, the quantum keys aren't too scary, and they've gotten a little bit better at their robustness, because like one of the first quantum algorithms that was done was for most of your quantum algorithms that are mostly available now are point-to-point quantum algorithms. If you splice the fiber optic cable, the other two parties know. So if you don't set up a fix or tune the cable just right so it can continue, then people are having a bad day, because the quantum tunneling thing basically sees if the cable's spliced into and if it's being man in the middle or not. There's more than the end-to-end places. Like if you have a router that's using a fiber optic cable and your ISP is using a fiber optic cable, the encryption's not happening between yours and their site, and then basically then changing encryption over from, say, your office here, your local office, and then your office in San Francisco. If there's a man in the middle, someone tries to splice into the fiber and sniff data, then basically all the packets become garbled and corrupted. Then basically immediately throws an error. They had a hack for it a few years ago, where someone could break in and then reassemble the packets, but then they improved the key strength and retweak the algorithm. So the quantum cipher on that particular one is meant mainly for fiber optic cables, and point-to-point data encryption for just shipping data over the pipe. But with quantum encryption, why the places like the NSA are worried about it is because you can have basically a one-time quantum pad level encryption that's virtually unbreakable.
Right.
because basically it can establish two keys between two things. And like they've had, quantum machines that they've had math problems that haven't been broken for 6,400 years just fall to pieces within under 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's what's scary about it to me. So as soon as we get enough qubits, then encryption programs are going to have to be rewritten.
Which is why they've gone to like SHA-3. They're trying to go to SHA-3, which is a bubble block cipher, which is much more harder to do with on a quantum level. So, but yeah, a lot of your classic encryption that uses two very large primes will have to be refactored in such a way that there's maybe 5 or 6 primes involved.
Right.
So it'll be much more significant and difficult to break, and or smaller layers of encryption, and then basically a thin layer of encryption, a medium layer encryption, and then basically a thicker layer of encryption, and a nest, basically nested AES in such a particular offshooting pattern that's more difficult to factor. But key management practices is kind of key. Some keys like PGP, 5 years is good enough to keep them. In some cases, if they're hardened enough, some depending on the policy and procedures, PKI infrastructure, most places keys are held for a year or two. Depends on how thick your keys are. Digital signatures and digital certificates, they're good for non-repudiation, integrity, and hashing and so forth, and good for email. Plus, if you've ever managed Active Directory, if you don't have a good PKI structure, it don't work.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully quantum keys won't be on the test.
There may not be, there might be, is quantum encryption valid or true or false? I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
may not be that technical about how the quantum keys are doing. I'm just saying for your edification, the most quantum keys I've seen is basically for like a hardware fiber optic router to hardware fiber optic router. Basically, it'll say here, understanding methods of crypto-analytic attacks, brute force,
Mm-hmm.
fault injection, timing, man-in-the-middle past the hash, chosen ciphertext, implementation attacks, and side channel, and like ransomware.
Okay.
I mean, brute force, you can just keep, slinging passwords at it until it falls. Fault injection, like if you have a vulnerable implementation of like the RSA protocol, say that they've came up with a patch, and then the attacker's got a archived copy of RSA from a version or two ago that they can inject an exploit into to basically get it to leak keys or leak part of its secrets to the memory.
Mm-hmm.
Ciphertext attacks, that's like if you have like so-and-so's public key and you just keep shooting like, dictionary attacks through it, or known text. Like if you have like the
Mm-hmm.
collection of poems by Robert Frost and you throw the book through it.
Look for patterns on the other side.
So you have Mary Had a Little Lamb, his fleece was white as snow, and you basically can start, reverse engineering what the encryption is from having known text and getting the known plain text, and then that. And frequency analysis will show you certain things like A, E, I, O, and U, and other common letters that are implemented most. Again, like implementation attacks, like, I went to a conference, for OWASP, and one of them was about the crypto fairy dust. AES is really great encryption, but like some developers didn't check their code, and they were only using 5 bits of AES, where they thought they were using 52, but they had, made a LexDisic error, like I might have made, because I'm not the greatest programmer either, because dyslexia in programming, not good. They thought that they had a 50-bit, 52-bit of AES, and they had 5. So triple DES might have been just a bit safer than 5-bit AES. Who knows? So it's basically, if they even if they're using the best encryption in the world, but they fuck up something on their code,
It's not that great. Yeah.
it's not that great. I mean, they made a human error on its implementation, so, even if the algorithm is secure as hell, but their JavaScript that wraps around the algorithm or encrypts like the code from their website into the database isn't that great, then you can get an implementation attack that is pretty weak, and meaning that someone can just easily break it and decrypt it. Side channel attacks, like they can use like memory injection or other means to basically just watching the whole transaction in memory, and then, attacking it from like a weak point. It may be very strong encryption, or the algorithm may be strong, or the security may be strong, but, on the front and back of it, but it's got a chink in its armor on the side, then, they can find a way. Other ways, like timing attacks, like reading the memory and stuff like that, similar to like side channel. Other one is like man in the middle, like sniffing the memory or sniffing the conversation. Pass the hash was like a common one for Windows and Kerberos exploitation. The other example of a side channel attack that you might do onto to it is like if you have SSL, you can, if you wanted to be like doing man in the middle attack and combining it with side channel, enforce like an encryption downgrade attack. Such as, hey, we only support legacy SSL. Sorry, we don't support TLS. We're ye olden server. And if you get them to like, go through your man in the middle proxy onto to the new server, you can basically get like their public keys and or private key or otherwise, potentially. Kerberos, if they have weak encryption, or otherwise you can basically steal session keys or do like credential exploits to bump it up. And of course, everybody's seen ransomware. Design and site security facility controls, wiring closets, immediate distribution servers, like, good physical security, server room data centers, media storage, evidence storage, restricted and work security. Like a guy, let's put it this way, I had students that used to be in my class, and after weekending at my professors, they were not happy clams. His office had a evidence cage. So one of his little side things was to prepare evidence for defense attorneys and or the Indiana State Police. as a forensics contractor. Let's just say some of my classmates had kiddos. So some of them, after helping him process a few court cases, were a little squeamish for a while. But the professor put away some real sick bastards.
Yeah, yeah. That's not for everybody.
No, it takes a strong stomach. He would have to have media storage facilities. His area had to be highly secured. He had to be audited by the FBI to have, his cage had to be have good access controls, and then locks, cameras. Had to have a secure cage that was had a razor wire and all this other stuff. Any evidence processing had to take place inside of could be gathered and worked on in that particular cage. But even though if you had copies of it on the network for working with or viewing, if you were working with the media drives that they had to have in chain of custody, they had to be, cloned inside of that cage, and the drives could not leave that cage. Same with the cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
But they could go upstairs and work with the evidence, later once it's been captured on the forensic software for the network servers. But yeah, man traps, stuff like that. For data centers, HVAC and cooling is important. Fire suppression, power, redundant backup. Same with media storage and stuff is for backup. And restricted area security, such as the data center, only certain teams having access to it. Keeping track of who had access to what.
Right.
One of the old mans who was owned a penetration testing company, you would dress as a janitor and wear your staff down. And then he'd plug a bash bunny into your nearest server once he got into your area. So once he could wear the staff down and get to a critical system, he would plug in a bash bunny. Meanwhile, his people that were actually smart were sitting across the street, but you'd be like the sweet old man, dust your plants. He would work on you for 2 weeks until the staff would get that nice security lecture and wouldn't let their guard down. But basically, he would work on them for 2 to 3 weeks until they finally let their guard down. And
Left the room while he was there or something. Yeah.
Yep. As soon as the secretary left the room, boom, he'd hit her computer with a bash bunny, especially if it was unlocked and unsecured. And even if it was locked and secured, his little bash bunny had a fix for that too. But he would that would be he gave talks, on Black Hat and DEF CON, and they're on YouTube. So, that's why the key rooms, or some places I've gotten, easy access to them just by showing them an email without them even bothering to confirm. It's I just stand there and well, are you coming? I'm I said, gee, I thought you were going to at least, call and confirm, right? And they're like, huh? I'm a data. I said, for all I could be part of the red team that, was coming to get you. I said, gee, I figured you at least trust but verify, right? No, they would take me back and then verify in front of their boss. But some places, that keeping the stuff locked down is a good idea. And that's why a lot of companies are doing segmented networks, because even if someone's computer gets compromised, it can't take down the whole network. Environmental issues, etc., for cooling and suppression. As you've seen some of the new data centers, they're using water chillers for them servers. Of course, everybody knows has probably had the OSI model beaten to death, so I won't, beat that to death.
Oh yeah.
IP6, I imagine you two know it probably better than most, right?
Oh yeah.
And you can get a free certification in, right?
Free certification in IPv6.
Oh, yes.
I did not notice. From Hurricane?
Yep. The first certification is the lowest level that you can get is answer 5 questions.
Oh, cool.
So, as long as you can answer the 5 questions for the first time, you can get it. I need to add the quad A resolution into my domain panel at GoDaddy, but then I can get my final one. But the next ones are more prove it.
Mm-hmm.
So since I was using Google Sites, all I had to do was have like a text file that was downloadable.
Right, yeah, to make sure you can access it over v6.
Yep, and that's it.
Remember the turtle?
Yeah, I remember the turtle. But Google, Google hosting, like if you have Google hosting set up, it's like 46. It's like the magic host that's both 4 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, like the IPv6, you can prove it. And if I tested it right now, no, I'd have to make the glue, but if it was quad A resolution, then I would go up to, Sage. But, first test is like if you can answer the 5 trivia questions over and over again, yay. Next
Cool.
one's, it forces you to prove it. I haven't had so much to do over the years. I haven't bothered, doing the Sage thing, and for a while they weren't doing IPv6 glue on GoDaddy until recently. But, just free tidbit there. Some places look for it, like the other IPv6 certification is more of a monster to get and not free. And, because they want more security, or the IPv6 Security Alliance and all that fun. Basically the IPv6 has baked in VPN or IPsec baked in secure protocols, implications of multi-layer protocols, converged protocols such as fiber channel over Ethernet, iSCSI, and voice over internet protocols such as VoIP, microsegmentation such as what I was mentioning earlier, software-defined WAN and virtually extensible local area networks, and encapsulation, software-defined wide area networking, such as like using CASB and cloud systems, making remote resources appear part of your local WAN. or, like Office 365, etc. But some people want to have software-defined controls on their local area network because they basically want to be able to have, VLANs and stuff like that that segment part of the network, but then, the management people can see into the whole of the network, or certain teams can see into pieces of the network. But they also want to protect and segment other pieces of the network, such as like accounting or other crown jewels, or like the backup systems, so they can come online, systems can see the backup systems when they're appropriately defined. The backups can run, and then basically when the backup systems are no longer needed, they can quarantine them back off.
Right.
That way, like during, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, the ransomware attack can't see the backup systems and infest them too. Or will appropriately tag a system that has suspected ransomware and throw it onto a quarantine network that can't see much, and then someone can go deal with it. Wireless networking, Wi-Fi is new technology for light network. Like the Z-Wave type stuff, your alarm systems at home use it, like some of the small businesses use stuff like that. Unfortunately, like some of the Bluetooth protocol, like door locks, some of them can also use Zigbee and stuff like that, and can turn off your alarm if they're opened with the right, code. But how do you know it's the right code? Because some of the, Bluetooth Wi-Fi recently has hacks to it. And you can play the same attack back with a cell phone, so not hard. So it's like my stepson wanted me to get one of them Bluetooth locks from the store, the hardware store, and I'm like, no.
Yeah,
He's
you
like,
need
why?
a good vendor for that.
I was like, no. He goes, why not? I'm like, if I live 30 miles in the country, maybe. But here in the apartment complex, no. And he's like, why? And he goes, well, why? And I'm like, I showed him the article, and he's like, oh, crap. I'm like, the guy upstairs can sit in his living room and be within reception range of that door lock. Might take him 3 weeks, might take him a month, but open sesame. Do you
Yeah.
really want that? If I was 30 miles out in the middle of nowhere, okay. But, someone's usually not, the chances of someone coming up to my door on some like 5-acre farmhouse and on the outskirts of town to be low, and bit lower there. But like in an apartment complex, yeah, they can just keep spoofing, smacking, and stomping on it all day. 5G is an interesting beast. It potentially has, you can pretty much, soon 5 or 10 gigs in the city would be very easy. And a lot of IoT devices can now get 5G hats. So, if you're a red team operator, 5G is looking really lovely for you. You can have Kali Linux, a nice desktop with a nice GUI interface. And best of all, I've got it plugged into your network, baby. What more could you want? Or I've got a couple of antennas in your cafe, and you got Starbucks over there, and everybody sees the nice, pretty Starbucks Wi-Fi, and I'm spoofing it, and I'm giving out the dreaded Facebook that y'all don't want me to give out, and my Wi-Fi, pumpkin software is giving, making sure that all the GIFs have Metasploit leased into it. Good time. But, if 5G if you're the attacker, then, 5G offers you much. But, it can offer, like if you're a small business out that has a site office out in the country, or you have emergency backup, also 5G offers you quite a lot for a emergency backhaul. So it's just like, if you have a wireless protocol analyzer that can see, then, want to make sure that if you have a 5G, 5 or 4G node in your building, that's basically for networking, that it's yours and not, Mr. Joe Schmo pen testing company that you may or may not have hired to audit you. That would be a tactic I would employ. So you can get 5G for Raspberry Pi and or like Odroid, like now. It's expensive, but
Interesting.
6Fab's gone in 4G, but then they've got some that are 5G now. This one's got a 5G hat. Zytel automatically makes ones for it. And, the guy who runs Dallas B-Sides also runs Telesploit. He'll send you a pen. Basically, he won't send you pen testers to your building. He'll just ship you a Kali Linux in a box that's been cloudified. They'll give you a nice audit report. So they ship you a jump box. But I'm just saying, if you want to make the nice Raspberry Pi style jump box or an Odroid jump box, it's got 8 gigs and a 5G modem. If it's close enough to your window and I can hide it behind a server cabinet, I can, just like that nice little fish tank hack that I showed you a moment ago in Vegas, you could literally hide it underneath the floorboards. Bob's your uncle. So you could take, instead of having the big beefy little, Dell, XPS little mini, tower that he ships you, can have something the size of a credit card and, a few antennas, hiding out. That does the same thing as this and, uses your own C2C. He just basically rents you the, stuff. But, for backups, it offers good things, for if you have like a router and you need emergency failover, it's great. But then you have to also make sure that you can do like a cell phone audit of your stuff if you're using a cellular network as an emergency backover, because, the rogue device possibility, you might have to have basically the security take everybody's cell phones for a day and then, make sure they're off and do an audit once in a while. Just make sure you don't have any rogue 5G or 4G devices tapping your network. Content distribution networks. A lot of places will do that. Now you will use like a third-party content distribution network for, file delivery. They usually have lots of bandwidth for doing it. They can push them out faster, and they don't have to have like a special web host to do so, or maintain your own web hosting for it. You can basically have like your continuous delivery published to them. And they'll make sure your users can download rapidly, such as, a few other third-party services that specializes in CDN. Secure network components.
I have not heard of an OMG cable.
OMG cables are the variety of bad USB. They look all pretty, don't they? Anyway, they have like a little adapter fob that puts them in arming mode. In other words, they're a rubber ducky, disguised conveniently as a charging cable. If you ever go to Black Hat and plug your phone into the nice free charging station there, you will quickly be on the wall of sheep. They will own your phone and everything on it. I guarantee it. So, as like a lot of places, you would want to tell your people take your own damn charging cables. Make sure that you get your nice cables from Amazon or .com or like Best Buy, and not KGB or us. We spy on you, because easily done. That like some of these have kits. It's where you can even also have the detectors that you can get for security. The OMG malicious cable detector, because you can make your own. A lot of these, if you can get like a new USB bracket and solder it in, they're not that big of a chip. So other rogue networks, I've got a few of these. Basically a USB rubber ducky with a Wi-Fi access point. Basically send a payload on there, and then if you want to inject more, you can just, as long as you're within range, you can just sit across the thing, log on to the access point that's baked into the server, and keep sending stuff to the secretary's computer. For red team, useful. For blue team, gives you a bad day. But for like any cyber education, yeah, don't ever use like the charging station kiosks, and because never know. These cables look very legit on the surface. They're a bad USB. They're pretty much ready to go. It's basically just a shrunken down USB rubber ducky. It's got the similar chipping architecture, basically on those cables. So, as a security thing, for your users, if you're ever giving cyber education, I would say that take your own charger, take your own cable, get them from a